Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Your Life is Story podcast. I'm Wade Vincent, the host, and today I'm super excited to have Pastor Allen Chapin with me. We became friends probably 2 or 3 years ago, and man, I've just loved having this guy in my life. It's been great. And so maybe just to get started, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, kind of a little background?
Absolutely. And thanks for letting me be on. And I was, I kind of grew up in a ministry family. My parents were pastors, born in Orlando, Florida, lived there a year and a half outside there, moved to Moorhead, Minnesota, across from Fargo, North Dakota. So far south, far north, and then down to Pasadena, Texas, outside of Houston. And that's where I grew up most of the years was there. And, saved at 5, baptized with water, all this stuff, involved in church, and called to preach at an all-night prayer meeting.
So how old were you when that happened?
15.
Okay.
So I was 15, but about just several months later, just started walking away from the Lord, making my own choices, doing my own thing, going my own way. Dropped that call, really just kept going through all the motions. I mean, my parents were pastors. I lived in their house. I had to go to church,
Right.
all those things, but I wasn't living it, and just kind of wanted to do my own thing. I didn't want somebody telling me what to do and all that. I just wanted to live life the way I wanted to live it. And so for 4 years, just walked away, went through all the motions, but walked away from my relationship with the Lord, and took some pretty strong circumstances, but got my attention, and had a youth pastor who loved me back to the Lord, and created an opportunity or found an opportunity. And man, I remember a service just turning my life back over to God, and but still wasn't saying yes to ministry, because by then that point I thought, well, I've just messed up too bad. I can't. I mean, God's not going to want to use me now after all this. I've made a mess of everything. How could He do anything with this? And so that probably took another year and a half or so for me to kind of like come around and go, oh, okay. And I remember my youth pastor would take me everywhere to do whatever he was doing. He would just take me and he'd say, come go with me and do this. Come go with me and do this. He goes, hey, we're going to lead worship at this youth camp. Come lead. Well, you've probably heard me sing, and I shouldn't sing most of the time. And so he wasn't taking me for my vocal chops for sure. I'm not recording any albums like you. That's what's not happening. But so I knew, he's just trying to get me into moments where I'm going to be in the presence of our God, and just stay faithful. And I remember helping lead. It was during an altar time, and just kids everywhere. God was moving powerfully. And back then they didn't have, projectors and all. I mean, you had the overhead projector and a video screen. And I remember open air tabernacle. I remember walking behind that thing and God going, hey, I still want you to preach. And I was like, you don't want me, God, I've messed up and all that. He goes, no, I want you. I want you to preach. And I was like, he's like, I still want you to do that. And I was like, hey, if you'll take me, I will go anywhere you want me to go, say anything you want me to say, do anything you want me to do for the rest of my life. You just call the shots. As long as you're in charge, I'm going. Let's go.
And I found it kind of amazing, because probably everybody feels a little bit that way, that I'm not qualified to I'm not good enough. I didn't toe the line good enough. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what's amazing is God's so great.
Yeah.
He doesn't need perfect vessel
No.
to work through. He can accomplish whatever He wants with whatever He wants. You know what I'm saying? And so and I think sometimes we have to go through some stuff, like just to get our perspective right.
Yeah. So. Yeah, absolutely. So it was a journey. Not that I got it right all from then on. It's not like, oh, well, from that moment on, Allen was flawless. No. I mean, praise God that it all hangs on Jesus, and we're like, He's taking care of all of it for us, because as hard as I try, I don't always get it right, And but just went on. He opened a door for me to go to Bible college. Was able to go do that. Met my amazing wife Angela there, and we youth pastor, lead pastor, served our denomination in a leadership role statewide there in Louisiana. Traveled as a preacher. And now we're here pastoring, and but then he's added other pieces of the puzzle to it. So helping students who feel called to ministry. We helped launch that a couple of years ago to here in South Texas to help young people that feel like they've got that call on their life. And I'm like, man, I just want to help them stick with it, go for it, and not fall into some of those same traps I did. And then, writing and all the other components, the things that he's doing that he lets me do. And God's gifted us with two amazing boys who have struggled with infertility for the first 12 years of our marriage. And then, we were in the process of trying to adopt from China. It wasn't coming together. We were even going to switch countries and do all that. It wasn't coming together. All of a sudden, just miraculously, God, and that was a cool story. We did not be able to, Angela says, I'm getting ready to travel and go preach someplace. And she goes, I was going about 4 hours away, and I was getting up early on a Sunday morning to go travel and preach. And she goes, hey, pick up a pregnancy test on the way home. Well, we take a bunch of pregnancy. I didn't, it was like, whatever, one more. So it's okay. And so I get down there, and I'm just on the front row waiting, till they tell me, hey, it's your turn, whatever.
Right.
And the pastor is about to dismiss the kids to go to kids' church, and he's starting to introduce me, and his wife's playing the keyboard, and she stops and she says, before you dismiss the kids, I hope this is okay. But most of y'all don't know, but Pastor Allen and his wife really wanted to have kids and haven't been able to. And since they want to have kids, I think we should have our kids pray for him before they leave and go to kids' church. And I was like, well, this ought to be cute, And so I'm standing there, and about 15, 20 kids come gather around me. They're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever,
Yeah.
But dude, then they lay hands on me and start praying for me. And somebody had taught these kids how to pray. Like they were getting a hold of heaven. And I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, God, whatever you want.
Right.
And when they prayed for me, it was like, I think something just happened, And so on the way home, I pick up the pregnancy test, and Angela takes it positive. And I was like, stupid, I bought the cheap one. I shouldn't have bought the cheap one. I was like, I'm going back and buying the most expensive one they got, and I'm buying 2 of them. Like, just
Got to make sure.
And so sure enough, she's pregnant, and God bless us with that was Alex. And then a couple of years later, Austin. We didn't know. I mean, we had stayed in the adoption process because we wanted more than one kid, and we just thought, well, this is a one-off miracle, And then God does it again. We're just like, whoa, this is crazy. So,
What's amazing is my last guest was my niece Jessica, and she was talking about she had infertility and waited 11 years, before she could have, and she was talking about it. And she said my aunt, which is actually my wife, and she was, struggling as you do. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and was talking about, and her advice was, says, listen, you have to understand that God's timing.
Yeah.
And that the time that they need to be on this earth, and she kind of got into that a little bit. And what's amazing, she says, now I can see why he needed to be born. And so I thought that was kind of
that's awesome,
incredible. So it's like, our timing is obviously usually not his timing.
Yeah.
And his is always wait a little longer, right?
Yeah. And I will say, I think we hopefully have been better parents because we had them older.
Yeah.
There's stuff that we were just like, it's just not that big a deal. Let that little stuff go, and just love them and raise them, and so I think that's probably made it a little bit easier.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, I know you're an author. How many books have you written? And,
I just released the 7th one. And cool story, which you'll find out more later, just partly because we were on this journey together in writing. But when I had this desire to write a book as a teenager. And this was again before I walked away from the Lord. I was like, I want to write a book for Christian teenagers by a Christian teenager, because everything was written by adults. I was like, adults don't understand this. Like, if one of us could write something, of course, this was before Joshua Harris, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, and people started doing that. It just didn't happen. Nobody was out there doing that. And so I was like, this would be awesome. Of course, then I walked away from the Lord. I still had that desire in my heart, but I knew, it's like, I can't write this book right now because I'm not living. Well, by the time I came back to the Lord, I was 20. And I was like, I'm not even a teenager anymore. Now I'm one of those adults. And, I'm going to be saying, well, if you just don't do what I did, whatever. I was like, and so I just shelved that desire. And it wasn't till I was 46 that I finally let that back out. And I just got to this point, and I wanted to write a book, but and I told Angela, I was like, I really want to write a book. Like, I think I'm supposed to. And she's like, well, do it. And I was like, oh, I think I am, but and it just, nothing. I just wasn't doing anything about it. And I had traveled to speak someplace, and I came home, and it was my birthday or Father's Day or something like that. And she and the boys had gotten me some gifts, and she kept one that was in a gift bag for last. And she goes, she's the queen of disclaimers when she gives a gift. Now, if you don't like it, you can take it back and and all this stuff. And I'm like, just give the gift, whatever. But anyway, so she goes, okay, this one's handmade, homemade, handmade. Like, I made it, and I'm not good at this, and you'll see. And it's not perfect, and it's not pretty, and it's not this. So I was like, quit with the disclaimers. And she's like, but I just feel like you need to have this. She's like, so open it and I'll explain it. And so I take the tissue out of the thing, and I take it. There's these two L-shaped pieces of wood. Two pieces of wood stuck together, and another two pieces of wood stuck together. And the nailing, the gluing, it's not perfect. It's stained, but you can tell not perfect. She goes, you know what it is? I was like, no. She's like, she sets it on the thing, and with space in between them, and she goes, they're bookends. And one day, your books are going to sit between those bookends.
Oh, wow.
And when she said it, it was like a switch flip.
And that almost makes my eyes leak a little bit,
Yeah.
just to hear it,
And so I started to write, and I was like, okay, I don't know how to do this though. And so it was interesting, because I'd only thought I'll only ever write one book, but she had said books. And so anyway, I make this commitment. I go, I'm hosting a retreat for youth pastors and kids pastors and all this stuff. And I'm trying to teach them how to dream. I'm like, the problem is sometimes we can't get our dreams accomplished because we're not willing to share them with other people. If we would share them, there's other people around us who could help us achieve the dream. And so I was like, so I'm going to tell you mine. I'm like, I'm going to write a book by my next birthday. And I just passed my 46th birthday or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to write a book by my next birthday. And I said, the problem is, I know I can do the writing. I don't know how to do cover design. I don't know how to edit. I don't know how to get it published and out there. I don't know how to do any of that. And so I was like, does anybody here know? And somebody raised their hand. I was like, hey, didn't you bring a guy in to teach us some stuff about graphic design last summer at camp and da-da-da-da? Maybe he would help you with the cover. I was like, genius. Okay, I'm writing stuff down, like, yeah. Okay, good. This other girl raised her hand. She goes, hey, I know, like, me as a youth pastor, but my job in life is that I'm a high school English teacher. I'd be happy to edit your book for free. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. It may not be like a professional whatever, but at least you'd have it done. And I was like, okay, and somebody else goes, didn't you just have a friend that published a book? Didn't he like self-publish on Amazon or something? And I was like, yeah, that's right. They're like, you guys are friends. Why don't you ask him? He'd probably tell you how to do it. And I was like, so anyway, so we started going through this whole thing. And so I was like, you guys, this is awesome. Do you realize you just helped me? Like, I'm going to be able to see this dream going around. Anyway, so I write it. Sure enough, one day before my birthday, the proof copy comes in the mail, and I'm holding a hard copy of my book that I wrote with the help of all these other people to help me figure out, right, in my hands one day before my birthday. And I was like, oh. And so the first thing I did was I went and I set it between those bookends. I said, Angela, look. It was so cool. It was a cool moment. And I'm just going, whoa, this is cool. But then I had the bug. Like, and it wasn't my best book. It's a leadership book. I would have never written in a leadership. It's not like I go, oh, I'm like a premier leader, like I'm John Maxwell Jr., whatever. It's not at all. But that's the one I felt like the Lord prompted me to write. So that's what I wrote. So I did it. And but it was so cool sitting there seeing that. And the first time you hold that book in your hand after you've written it, man, there's just no feeling like it. You just go, whoa. And then you put it out in front of people, and that's your baby, and you're going, I hope everybody loves my baby like I love my baby,
right.
and it's kind of crazy, kind of like songs, putting them out there.
So that, I just today, the day we're doing this morning, actually a song I just got released. So, I definitely can feel the same thing. It's like, is anybody going to have, is it going to be well received? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's the question I have is, you just kind of feeling that you're like, hey, I just put myself out there.
It's like,
how's the reaction going to be? And but I got to tell you, like, and I don't know how many books you've written right now, but I can tell you the one that I read probably been maybe a year ago or so was the book Listen.
Yeah.
And honestly,
it's my favorite.
Yeah. I'm not saying this because we're friends. Like, I think it's the best book I've ever read for me. And I just remember there was, and I won't get this right, so correct me if I don't get this right, but there was a paragraph in there somewhat to this is like, don't think it's strange or be upset about, the devil kind of bringing the battle to you. He says, and it's kind of, you're kind of doing it and speaking kind of like God would speak. He says, I'm bringing you to the battle.
Yeah.
And he said to fight for those that aren't able to fight for themselves yet.
Yeah.
And he bringing you to the battle to get the victory. And I was like, man, what a perspective changer that was, because I was like, man, you feel like when you're getting attacked, you're almost feeling like the victim. But now when I get into a battle, I'm like, okay, I'm fixing to take some territory.
That's right.
And then, the thought to me is like, without Goliath, David never becomes king.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that adversity in that battle where we feel like it's coming against us, it's actually to promote us or to move us to the next level.
Yeah, it's us coming against it.
Yeah. So that was like, I read that over and over and over. I shared that with my friends. I gave, in fact, I was telling you earlier, I was looking for my book because I was going to reference it again, and I was like, oh man, I gave it to a friend. I don't remember what friend I gave it to. So I ordered another one.
The cool story about that whole thing is we'd really came that season in the book. I'll tell it at the beginning, but the Lord challenged me to take 365 days. And before I did anything, every day for 365 days, 1 year, every morning, first thing before I did anything else, just listen for him to speak. And I thought, that's odd. It's different. I mean, I get up every day and pray and read my Bible and talk. So it's not like I don't talk with God, but like, in our sphere or whatever, it was always like the Bible, scriptures, like, don't, nothing before scripture, so I was like, oh, make sure I read my Bible first, so for God to go, hey, let's just listen and trust that it's me speaking to you, I'm like, okay, which obviously I line it all, make sure it matches up to scripture. But God challenges me to do that. And so I thought, well, if the creator of the universe is going to speak, it's pretty important, probably. I'm going to write it down.
Probably, yeah.
Probably
want to listen.
Probably want to listen.
Take notes.
That's exactly. I'm like, it's probably important. I'm probably going to need to remember some of this, and I don't want to forget what he said. So I start writing it down. And I kept waiting, like about a month into it. I thought, God, it's really nice to me the way he's been talking to me. So I start thinking, why is he buttering me up? Like, when's the other shoe going to drop? Like, that's what it is. He's saying all these nice things because he's about to come in and he's going to whoop me on some stuff, whatever. And I don't know what I thought was wrong in my life. I just figured there had to be something, God's going to set me straight.
Right.
And it didn't happen. And it didn't happen. It was just encouraging, helpful. Even when he was corrected, it was so loving and tender and helpful and encouraging that I was like, it almost didn't feel like you're being corrected. You knew, oh yeah, I need to work on this, but it wasn't. And so I remember being months into this and kind of him just like, Alan, the other shoe's not going to, there is no other shoe to drop. This is what I wanted with you every day. That's why I wanted you to listen, you know? And it would be things, it would be like, hey, today really pay attention to people in need or something. There were times when it would just be very specific about things. Then there's sometimes it was just general truth, and so I was listening, and as I got months and months into this, I'm thinking, God, I wish everybody had this. This is so sweet and wonderful. If everybody just knew this is how you felt about us. And I was getting to the end of that year, and I was like, God, I don't want this to go away. I don't want to stop. He's like, you don't have to stop doing this. I just wanted you to get the practice of it, And so I was like, wow. And so as I came to the end, I was like, I wish everybody could have this. And then when I felt him prompt to say, well, why don't you share some of it in a book form? And so each of those days in there is something specific God said to me, with the devotion and those kind of things that went with it. But I was just like, and there was so much, and of course, out of that flows, most people know, and I haven't released any of that much yet. But as I got to the end, I was like, man, God, I wish. He goes, well, hey, listen, you have heard my voice. You know my voice. You know it's me. You've matched up against Scripture. You have a sense of this. I'm going to keep speaking to you every day for you. But for the next 365 days, I'm going to speak to you for you, and then I'm going to speak to you for somebody else. And I want you to say to them whatever I share with you. And I was like, no, that's weird right there. I'm not a prophet. I'm not one of those guys. I don't know about that, God. Now you're getting out into some weird territory, and I don't know that I'm probably the wrong person. Let's just that's uncomfortable. It's awkward, whatever. He's like, just, my voice, just do it. And so I was like, well, this first year of this listening was great. So if that's what he wants me to do, I'll go on the journey. And I listen, this is all in the middle of, we lost a ministry role that we loved. We thought the Lord would open another door. He didn't for 2.5 years. Then he did open a door for us to come here. 2 weeks after we start here, when giving up our home that we loved, we thought we would live in forever, all those things, kind of relationships behind us, all those kind of things. Move here. Actually, couldn't. It took a year for our house to sell there and for us to find a house here. And so I commuted 4 hours. I drove from Louisiana 4 hours. I'd drive in on Wednesday, be here for Wednesday night stuff, stay through Sunday services, turn around, drive back home, be with the family for a few days. And sometimes they come with me, sometimes they stayed there. So anyway, but in all of that, Angela's dad got cancer. And 2 weeks after we started here, and we're moving our family away from, because we were only like an hour away from her mom and dad. 2 weeks after we started here, he passed away. About a month later, one of our leaders in the church had a moral failure, found out that there had been some stuff going on, and he ends up going to prison for life. So I've been here a month, and one of my core leaders, that's my thing. A month later, hurricane. And then about 4 months later, that was 8 months after her dad died, my dad died. And then 3 weeks after my dad died, COVID shut down the nation. So that was our 4 or 5 years window. But it was during all of that, with our dads dying and all of COVID and all those things, that the Lord was taking me on that year of listening.
Yeah.
And he was carrying me through all that. I didn't realize it at the time. I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to stay alive and take care of my family and do the ministry he's called me to and do all this stuff. And we just, but it was that carrying me through. So then when he says, now share it with other people, I'm like, hey, he carried me. If the one thing I say to somebody is going to carry them, okay. And some days it would be a very specific name. He would say, contact this person. Sometimes I knew the person. Sometimes I didn't. I'd have to go hunt them down on social media, find them and send them a message and say, I know we don't know each other. And I know this sounds really weird.
But hey, God told me to talk
God
to
told
you.
me to tell you this, and if you think it's wrong and all that, please feel free to tell me and I'm not offended. And and I had everything from, how in the world did you know that? Like literally had one person contact us. In fact, they were some denominational leaders nationally for us. And the Lord says, contact them and tell them this. I was like, Lord,
absolutely not.
I was like, they need to be telling me what you're saying. They know you far. God, there's no. And he goes, just tell. And so I told him, they message me back and say, can we call you? He's like, call. And they said, why did you say this? And I thought, oh, I'm in trouble. And I said, I told you, I just felt like I was praying. I just felt like, and I'm on this journey and this is what's happening. And they're like, you literally said things that we have only said in the privacy of our own home that nobody else knows. You used exact wording that we have only spoken to each other as a couple. And like literally nobody else has heard this. So we just wanted to make sure, like how is this happening? Did somebody bug our house or something?
Right, sure.
It's like, it was that crazy. I had all that all the way to, had a guy that I went to Bible college with that I thought would receive it very well and told me that I wouldn't know a prophetic word if it slapped me in the face, And so the whole gamut, everything. But it was amazing in that year to watch what the Lord did with that. Another cool story. We moved my mom. My dad passed away, so we moved her from Houston area to Alabama. My sister lived over there, Southeast Alabama. So that morning I get up. I'm in a hotel in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or whatever, and I'm getting ready to jump back in the U-Haul truck. Mom's driving her car and I'm driving the U-Haul truck, and I'm in the hotel room, and God says, "Tell Jamie this." And so I was like, okay, cool. I'll go down to breakfast and there'll be somebody in there and their name's Jamie, and I'll know and I'll share it, and on with our day. We got to drive the U-Haul truck, And so I go down there and there's not one person in the breakfast area. Literally, I'm the only person. I was like, well, that's not it. We go to check out of the hotel and there's a guy and a girl. I thought Jamie could be going either way, guy or girl, right? And so I was like, it's going to be one of them. I look at their name badges, neither one of them. I'm like, great. Okay, maybe I got this wrong. We jump in the truck. We're driving down the road. We stop for lunch at a Dairy Queen, and I think, okay, somebody working.
Jamie's here.
Jamie is in. No wonder it's in it's in Mississippi or wherever we were.
That's where all the Jamies live.
That's where they all. We're gonna. And I go through. There's not one person in there. I'm looking all around the place trying to figure out, is there somebody that I could identify as Jamie, and nobody. We get to Mom's house. We're going to unload the truck the next morning. It's late at night. We go in, we clean up, and I forgot something out in the truck. I go, Mom, I'm going to run out to the truck, get something. And she goes, okay. So I go out, and as I'm going out, her neighbor walks out of her garage and goes, hey, are you Miss Chapin's son? And I said, yes, ma'am. My name's Allen. It's good to meet you. And she goes, that's awesome. My name's Jamie. And I was like, okay, just stop right there. Okay. This is going to sound hyper weird. I get it, and I was like, I don't know if you're a believer in Jesus or not, and she goes, yeah, I am. I was like, well, that's going to make this a lot easier then. Okay, thanks. And I said, would you mind if I shared something? I was praying this morning. I felt like God said, tell somebody named Jamie this, and you're the only Jamie I've met today. Would it be okay if I, sure. So I told her whatever it was. I don't even remember what it was. I told her, and I was like, does that match up with what's going on in your life? She's like, yeah, actually it does. I was like, well, cool. Well, look, super nice to meet you and everything. And thanks for being Mom's neighbor. And if you ever need anything, whatever, blah, blah. And that was kind of it, but it reminded me again, like he knows.
Yeah.
He knows exactly. Like he spoke it to me in Louisiana, but the moment was for Alabama, and it was for somebody I'd never met yet. And honestly, I don't even remember Jamie's last name or any of those things. But all throughout that year, he just reminded me that he knows where people are at. And the cool thing was in all of that, I thought, he knows where all these people are. That means he knows where I'm at.
Sure.
He knows where I'm at, And if I need it, he can have somebody from another state show up and roll up into my day and go, Malin, you know?
So as you're talking, I was thinking that I know there's people out there thinking, well, you're a pastor,
Yeah.
so all these things happen to
Yeah.
you or
Obvious.
whatever, and I would have to think because just speaking for myself, like there's a lot of times I I don't feel qualified to represent God. I mean, I got my flaws and I'm well
Yeah.
aware of what they are,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, I'm not qualified, and I just, in my mind, I disqualify myself from it. You know what I'm saying? Uh, I'm certainly I'm not a pastor, and that, it's not a gift I have, but I wonder if there's some, like you could maybe speak to those that like, I think being a pastor, is absolutely a calling, right? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But you also have to depend on God just like anybody else. In other words, like
Absolutely.
the things that you're talking about doing that, God didn't give you that information because you're a pastor. He gave you that
Oh, no.
information because you were listening,
Yeah.
you know?
In fact, like really very little of it even had to do with what I was doing as pastor. I mean, the bulk of what happened, the bulk of the things he spoke to me were about me. It wasn't about the church or what we were doing there. Occasionally it would be, it'd be something. Occasionally with the things that I was supposed to speak to people, sometimes he would say, hey, share this with that whole church because they all need to hear this, right? Um, and so that happened a couple of times, but it wasn't mostly me doing. I mean, it wasn't about any of the ministry stuff. It really wasn't. It was about my walk with the Lord. And yeah, I didn't feel qualified. And when I don't feel qualified for him to speak to me, I don't, let alone me speak for him, and then you're having to make the assumption that we actually heard from God, right?
Yeah.
Flawed that we are, imperfect as we are. And then did I share it right? And from a good heart and a right heart. And, you know, um, and when people were upset about it, you know, how did you handle that? And really all of it, he's developing and growing me, um, and helping me in the process to be closer to him and hopefully to see, that I can impact people one on one. When we were talking about that earlier, like I don't have to be a huge social media influencer. I don't have to be a New York Times bestseller to influence or impact people. Um, he can utilize me to impact people one on one. And yeah, I've heard your stories too. Even at work and things where you're able to impact a life. Somebody comes to you and they got a problem in life, and you're able to talk with them, and that's so important. And he'll utilize any. The truth is, I was having this conversation with a family the other day. Like literally, we either believe that everything hangs on Jesus, or we don't. So no matter how good I try to be, I'm never going to be good enough. So that means I'm going to get it wrong sometimes. I'm going to have a wrong attitude, a wrong thought. I might say something wrong or do something wrong. Um, Fortunately, he's got me covered,
Right.
and it's hanging on him. That didn't mean I could just live crazy, and do whatever I want. No, I should be trying to honor that and go, wow, if he's done that for me, I want to do the best I can. So, you know,
Right.
and so, but then you do have to think, then if if he just already sees me as qualified and perfect and he wants to use me, then why don't I let him?
So what's crazy is I had a friend of mine say this to me. I mean, it's been years ago. I never forgot it. Like sometimes you hear things and it's just like bam. And he had actually gotten it from somebody else, which I'm glad it got passed down to me. But he said you need to trust more in God's ability to lead you than in your ability to follow.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, that hit me because it's like, yeah, he's God. I mean, he can lead me. I'm
Right.
somewhat cooperative most of the time. You know what I'm saying? But it's like it's just trust in him. You know, and I was thinking about a situation because you were talking about that, and every once in a while I feel something. You know, and I happened to be on a flight, and I was in one of the smaller planes, and I was in the front, and there was a stewardess that was, you know, she was in the jump seat sitting right in front of me, and man, I just feel this thing like I need to tell her something. And the same thing as you, like, man, I don't want to do this, man. She's going to think I'm weird. I don't even know this person. You know what I'm saying? And you know, but you understand what I'm saying. It's just boiling in you, you know. And finally, I'm like, listen, I don't want you to think I'm a weirdo, but you know, I put the disqualifier.
Yeah, that's right.
But man, blah 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 blah, and you know, and it was really about, you know, it was something I spoke to her about her current relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that, you know, just kind of basically saying, look, you should be in a situation where you value, you know, something to that degree. I don't remember the details of it or whatever. And, you know, and then, you know what I'm saying about, like, you always want to know, did I really hear that? Did God really say that to you? So does that kind of, you know, mean anything to you? And she looks at me, she goes, well, not really. Great.
Yeah, there you go.
You know,
Skip it. Never mind.
and so anyway, you know, the flight goes on or whatever, and blah blah blah. And then, but when we were deboarding the plane, it was like, I guess she felt open enough that she goes, hey, look, this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And blah, blah, blah. And so it was like, you know, when you're kind of working for God, like, somehow we get our feelings and how we feel and how we look, and we get the ego involved in it, and it's not helpful. You know what I'm saying?
It's not.
It's not helpful. But I guess what I was wanting maybe you to speak about is a little bit is like as a pastor, like, you have to deal with the same stuff, maybe even more stuff, you know, the battles, because if you know, if the enemy can kind of knock you out, well, he's affected a lot of people, you know what I'm saying? But I think sometimes I think, well, that's God's special person.
Yeah.
Well, you know, not.
No, and you can go through scripture and see it too. So, I mean, it's not like I go, oh, well, this is just me. I mean, but I get discouraged. There's times when I go, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. Like, are you kidding me? If we're not going to be able to do better than this, like, let's just give this up or whatever. Or if this is the way people are going to be, you know, there's times you get discouraged. You know, you got to keep taking it back to the Lord. But, you know, there's times when I go, wow, I just didn't treat my wife the way I should have. You know, I was just at a conference. I was actually speaking it was at another church. It was not huge. It was just a little like that we were doing. And I was just doing a breakout session. And I decided, it was for men. I decided to stay, like, you know, and hear the other speaker who was there, who was the main speaker for the weekend. I was like, well, I'll listen to his session, you know. And he was talking about, you know, serving your wife, and he, you know, just like, hey, you really want to love your wife? Like, think about everything she has to do and try to do those things for her before she has to do them for herself. Does her vehicle need to be filled up with gas? Go fill it up for her, you know? And he started listing all these simple things, and I was like, oh, I got so much room to grow.
For sure,
you know?
for sure.
And I thought, okay, like, I probably haven't been treating my wife at the level. Do I treat her bad? No. Could I treat her better? Yes. You know, are there times I'm too sharp with my kids? You know, and they go, wow.
I heard this, like, and to me, like, a lot of, like, you know, God will sometimes give me something directly, but most of what I know is just things I've, you know, put together from everybody that I've, you know, heard things from or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, you know, I was listening to somebody speaking. I don't even remember actually who it was, but he was talking about, you know, you're in these battles with your spouse. You know what I'm saying? He says, and you're trying to win the debate, the argument, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? He said, but think of it this way: in order for you to win, that means the person that you said you love the most has to lose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, well,
Dropping nuggets, bro.
bro, yeah. So I'm thinking, to me, so now it's like, it's like the thing I was talking about in your book. It reframed my perspective on things, and that also did the same thing. It's like, okay, I no longer want to win an argument with my wife. I just don't want to win.
Yeah.
I want us to win. And
Exactly.
so it changes the whole way you go into the conversation, instead of me trying to get my way and win
Yeah.
and prove I was right or whatever. And it's now I'm like, let me just do this and love the best I can. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just as we learn these things, as God teaches things, we get better. And I don't know if I'll be on the planet long enough to get it all right. You know
No,
what I'm saying?
exactly.
But I just keep trying to get better at things.
It's progress, not perfection, man. That's where, and that's what, I'm like, and I try to tell folks at church or anywhere or in any book or anything. It's like, I don't have it all together, but I can at least tell you what I've learned. I can at least, if I don't, and I may not even have it mastered, but I've at least learned it and I can hand it to you.
Sure.
And maybe you'll master it before I do. I don't know. I'm like, it's easy to put people on a pedestal that we think, oh, they're whatever, and I've just tried to always say, hey, like you'll do better to not put me, let's just put Jesus on the pedestal.
There you go. Yeah.
And let's don't how about I'm just trying to do the best I can and let's all do this together. And if I can help you, great. And okay, are we going to be further down the road? I use this illustration with teenagers sometimes. I'll be like, hey, and you might not want to listen to adults and stuff like that, but here's the deal. I'm like, if you were driving down the interstate and I was ahead of you in another vehicle and I was like miles ahead of you, like you couldn't see me, and I said, hey, there's a wreck up here and it's holding everything up. You're going to come up to an exit before the wreck. Take the exit. Like, you should listen to me. And not because I'm smarter than you or better than you or anything. I'm just further down the road.
Right. Yeah.
And I've seen something that you can't see yet. And so if you'll just take my word for it and trust me, I'm like just a little, and I tell people the same thing as adults or it's spiritually or whatever. Maybe somebody's just been living for the Lord longer and they're just further down the interstate than us.
Right.
And they've experienced more with the Lord and they can just say, hey, take that exit because this ain't going to work out for you,
Right. Sure.
don't get in this mess I'm in, and, or whatever it is. And so, I just go, hey, that's the way I try to live life and do ministry and tell people, I'm like, hey, um, we're just all we're on this journey together, trying to follow him, know him, love him, learn him. And so hopefully somehow that communicates in messages and books.
I can tell you, like, just we met at like a kind of a networking event, and you were kind of looking for some support, I think, for the soup kitchen where y'all do the I don't know if you call it soup kitchen, but
that's what it is.
But every week you guys, your church gets together and feeds people that are less fortunate or whatever, which I think is an amazing ministry. And we kind of it's like I felt, man, I had to reach out to you, so I had to look it up, look the church up, look at that thing, and get in contact with you. But I can tell you, just speaking personally, like I very much value our friendship. I mean, you've been a godsend to my life, and the times we get to go to lunch and just kind of talk about things or whatever. I'm very appreciative of just the person you are, and I just love you, and I think what you're doing, in the kingdom is awesome. And, any way I can help you, I certainly would want to do that. I guess, we kind of need to wrap things up. Is there any last word, any last something you'd want to say to the viewers, to the listeners?
And I think if you said, Alan, what's a theme in your life like that just keeps coming up or whatever, that there's some key scriptures that come along, like, the Psalm 139, where it talks, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, that he knit you together in your mother's womb. Every day of your life was recorded in his book before a single moment had passed. Ephesians 2, that he's designed us for good works that he created for us long ago. that we're his masterpieces to do those things, that he's got purpose and destiny for every one of us, for our whole life. And just, like, go after that. Go after what that purpose is. Why did he put you on this planet? You go, I don't know. Well, like, I'm literally taking a course right now, an online course, going, how do I further develop purpose in my life? And go, I want to make the most of my life that I can. How do I do this even better? And I'm driven to see people live out their purpose. And because he's made us creatively and wonderfully, and we have all these different skills and talents and abilities. There's things you can do that I'll never do. And I love that. I love it. I'm like, I want to champion that. I want to cheer that on. I want to help you do that. Those things he puts in your heart, I'm like, let's go. Come on, bro. Let's be there for each other. And to be that, like, let's encourage each other and help each other.
I have this kind of, whatever you want to call it, I call it a dream or vision, not technically that, but just kind of, and I want to be part of a movement where, we change the generations for God.
Yeah.
But I don't want there to be the one supreme leader, the guy, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be around people that are that. It's not about the one person. I just want to be a part of a team that's moving the kingdom forward.
Exactly.
And so, so as we wrap this up, I just want to encourage everybody to know that God can rewrite your story. We're talking about your life, his story. And he's certainly done that for me. I know he's done it for you. You know what I'm saying?
Big time.
And it's not too late. And I always tell people this, and you have to make the decision for yourself. But I highly recommend, getting a relationship with Jesus. I highly recommend it. It changed my life. There's no way I could sit here and explain it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like somebody said, it's better felt than telt.
Yep.
But I highly recommend it. And, I appreciate you so much for taking time out to be on here.
Absolutely.
And, we probably in the future got to do this again, because
I
know there's way more we got to talk about, but appreciate you so much for coming. And
thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks everybody for tuning in and listening and watching the Your Life His Story podcast. And we'll see you next week.